Wayne Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Pastor Watts from the Pentecostal Church of Fort Worth. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges. Thank you, sir, for coming out today.
Thank you for the honor. Lord Jesus, as we approach your throne today, seeking mercy and grace, which you have promised, as you declared in your word, righteousness exalts a nation. It is evident in these perilous times that righteousness will lead us to great opportunities. I pray the peace of God, the wisdom of God, on decisions that are made today that will not only impact lives, but families, communities, and a nation. We thank you today, and I thank you for speaking to these wonderful leaders of our community in wisdom and in knowledge and in discretion. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Pastor Watts, for coming out today. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have one announcement as it relates to the agenda this morning. That'll be under Public Health. It'll be item 8G2, which is the lease agreement renewal with GONY. We're going to ask that we hold that particular item for 1 week. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of October the 23rd.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a proclamation today for Mr. McDermott. Dr. McDermott, why don't you please come forward and let me read this into the record. I know we have several members of our MHMR board here with us. Why don't y'all stand at this time also, and I'll read this. And staff, yes. Everybody, there you go. Whereas Jim McDermott has served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Mental Health and Mental Retardation of Tarrant County since 1990, providing leadership to a staff of approximately 1,400 people and overseeing a budget of more than $100 million. And whereas he has been the recipient of several local, state, and national recognitions, including the National Council for Community Behavioral Health Care 2009 Lifetime Achievement Award of Excellence. And whereas he led the merger of MHMRTC, Tarrant County Psychiatric Center, with Trinity Springs Hospital to form a single public psychiatric hospital, and developed a partnership with JPS and Trinity Springs 22 years ago to ensure a coordinated system of mental health care. And whereas under Dr. McDermott's MHMRTC provided psychiatric services for the Sheriff's Office for the past 15 years, fostered support and cooperation with Tarrant County probate and criminal courts, and was active in the development and support of Tarrant County specialty courts. And whereas in partnership with Tarrant County, he assisted in the creation of the Law Liaison Program that provides 24/7 telephone support for local law enforcement and acts as a significant jail diversion program. And whereas he was a founding member of the Mental Health Connection and IDD Needs Council, was active as a board member of the Mental Health Association of Tarrant County and the Presbyterian Night Shelter, and served on the National Association of Counties Health Steering Committee to ensure that behavioral health issues were addressed. And whereas Dr. McDermott has been instrumental in developing comprehensive behavioral health services delivery in Tarrant County through strong partnerships within the criminal justice, homeless, business, healthcare, political, consumer, and advocacy communities. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby congratulate Dr. McDermott for his outstanding achievements at mental health, mental retardation of Tarrant County, and his contributions to the community. In witness whereof, we've hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 30th day of October 2012, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Again, I want to thank all of the board members who are here. I want to thank the staff, but I also especially want to thank Dr. McDermott for the years of service that he's given. I guess tomorrow is your final day.
I think he's really too young to be retiring.
And he looks much too happy about it.
Well, I very much appreciate this recognition. It's been a wonderful journey the last almost 23 years, and actually the last 40 years in the business. And the part of what's made it very special has been the relationship with the county. From the very first day, and some of you were here at that time, and you, and we've continued to work together in a very, I think, very productive and unique way. And you know, the relationship between the county and the local authorities vary throughout the state, but we've consistently had a very strong relationship. And I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the fact that you've provided us with strong leadership through board appointments throughout the whole time. That makes a huge difference in the ability for somebody to lead an organization, is to have a strong board who plays an active role in the organization. So I appreciate the support of the county and the work that we've done together. And I look forward to the future. Susan Garnett's out there, and she's taken my place, and y'all all know her. She's got a long, positive track record of the center, and I know that there will be a continued good working relationship with our center and well into the future, and the health care changes that we're all facing, so that's great. But I think probably what I value the most is the friendships that I've made here on this Commissioner's Court, and then amongst staff. I mean, it's just I've gotten to know an awful lot of the staff over the year and develop a close relationship, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much for this recognition.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, I was just telling Susan that there will be an empty chair at the NACO Health Steering Committee table, and it'll have her name on it. So you need to guide her in that direction.
We look forward to her coming and beginning to be a part of that. I also, again, want to thank not only the staff, but also want to thank the board members who spend so much of their time and are so passionate about the service that they provide to the citizens of Tarrant County who are in need of the services that are provided by MHMR. We thank you all very much. I wish we could pay you just half of what you're worth. It would be so much more than that, and unfortunately all we can do is thank you, and for that we certainly want to do that. So again, I know you've got a meeting this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to being at that meeting, and maybe I can come up with a few more comments about Jim and the work that he's done. On a couple of other matters, just to mention, you know, we've got the United Way campaign going underway, and I know that we have this little friendly wager amongst us, and I know y'all are all doing your fundraising deals, and so my office kind of convinced me to take one for the team, and so we're actually going to go on a little auction, and we're going to have the ability of someone to throw a pie in my face. And, you know, I would,
Well,
now,
you may win this.
Whose idea was that?
well,
Whose idea
it was
was
more my office's idea than mine, but I'm
It
going to
was
be.
Tom's idea, wasn't it?
But not, you know, I will say this much. I think it is a great opportunity to raise money for United Way, and I would really kind of challenge the department heads and the other elected officials that if y'all wanted to participate in that and y'all wanted to possibly take a pie in your face also, that you could get, you know, raise a little bit more money for your department. So just consider that, and, you know, I'll have Ann maybe kind of touch base with you, or someone from my office will touch base and see if you would like to participate. Now, certainly, any of y'all can bid on putting a pie in my face. But, you know, I see your hand there, Mary Louise. I know you're excited about this.
What would it cost if, like, 4 commissioners plus the clerk put a pie in your face each?
Well, I will, let me just put it this way. Oh, no. You're going to have to put a lot more money in there than that if it's going to be more than one. So, you know, no.
How far away can you be before you can get rid
How
of
far?
No, you're going to have to be close up.
Oh.
Of course, for some of you, maybe the farther away would be a whole lot better because you'll never hit me.
Oh, I wouldn't count on that, Judge.
But Ann is dying to say something here.
Judge, also, with this auction website, we do have advantage of PayPal and credit cards. So
Have you
don't
checked
to
this
have
with the
cash.
DA?
The other thing is.
This ain't no raffle.
mentioned that departments could pool their resources in order to raise the bid. So, there's all sorts of possibilities.
But let me just, again, make sure everybody understands. If I'm the one taking the pie, then all the money goes to my department. If you want to take a pie in your face, then whatever the price that they pay to put a pie in your face, it would go in your department. It might save you from having to buy a lunch at the end of the month.
I don't know anybody would want to.
Anyway, just,
I'd rather pay money and throw one in your face.
so we'll see here as we go along, you know, the bidding will go up and we'll see how, you know, it works out. And, you know, there might be a price at which I would take more than one pie. We'll just see.
I was thinking about you ought to do a kiss the pig contest.
Well, Randy Turner's got a corner on the pig. He's kissed the pig for the last couple. I don't want to steal his pork.
Now, GK, you're not going to let the judge take the pie in the face by himself, are you? You got to take care of your judge.
You got to take
Where
up.
are
Just
you,
be, you know,
where are you going with this, Commissioner?
we just need a
I
little.
read that in your job description. You got to take care of your judge.
There's certain things I do for the judge, and there's certain things I'm not going to do for the judge.
So all I'll say is we just need a little friendly competition. I'm sure that, you know, that Wilder is going to try once again to raise more money than Mary Louise, and Ron was so far behind last year that, you know, he didn't even realize there was a contest going on. So, you know, we need to establish a little friendly competitions out there and see where we go on this deal. But we've got till the end of November, and we'll see what contests develop over the period of time.
Your Honor, I would check one thing. That pie deal I did out front of the courthouse over here, that was the highest grossing amount for United Way ever. Tom Vanderbilt bought 2 of them.
Well, Wilder, knowing you, we would expect nothing more. I can imagine the people were lining up out there. We might see about more than one. We might have to have flavors, though. It'll be my.
Coconut.
Now moving on to a more serious. There's a lot of stuff going on, obviously, throughout the country. I know we want to keep the people in the Northeast in our prayers as they continue to face the onslaught of Hurricane Sandy and everything that's coming on after that. And then with regards to yesterday's situation that occurred out in Forest Hill. I think we want to, if it'd be all right with the court, we'll close today's meeting in memory of Dr. Kirk, I believe, Dr. Danny Kirk.
If I might, Your Honor, I knew Reverend Kirk. He was an extraordinary man, compassionate, a compelling teacher of the word, a leader of his flock in the community where he served. This event was just a phenomenal tragedy, not only for his family, but for his church family and for the wider community. I understand from just reading the morning paper that he had tremendous influence on the lives of young men through his mentorships at both O.D. Wyatt and Dunbar High Schools. This is a tremendous loss to our community, and it does us honor to honor him by closing this meeting in his memory. Thank you.
Court members, you have before you the consent agenda with the exception of item 8G2, which is going to be held for 1 week.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we go to the Administrator section. On item 8A1, we're requesting that the Court approve the electronic submission of the FY13 Indigent Defense Formula Grant application and resolution to the Texas Indigent Defense Commission.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Just a note, members of the Court, on the agenda, when we get to the Human Resources section, there is one item, it's E3. This is a letter of agreement with Hay Group. We've asked Hay to be here to discuss that piece of work with you all. They're going to be here at about 10:30. So if they're not here at 10:30, we'll skip over that and come back to it before we close today.
Thank you. Ms. Glenn, you're up.
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our second item for today, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits and to double fill a position in budget and risk management. To the sadness of many of us, Vicki Truby is going to be retiring from county service at the end of November. And so our budget director is asking for a waiver of terminal benefits, which is about 50 vacation hours effective December 1st, and also permission to double fill the position effective November 13th. The net cost savings to the general fund we're estimating to be a little bit more than $16,700.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We can go to item 4. We're asking the court to approve a resolution to promote physical activity. As indicated in your court communique, a recent survey by Public Health found that 66% of adults in Tarrant County are either obese or overweight, and that over half adults who are 18 years and older do not meet or achieve the levels of physical activity that we're all required or should be getting. In response, Commissioner Brooks convened the Obesity Prevention Council, and in partnership with Public Health, we're reaching out to employers, schools, and churches to develop policies and promote physical activity in the workplace. So the resolution that you have there before you is Tarrant County's first step in an effort to do just that.
I want to thank HR for seeing the vision and for putting this resolution together. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Wetzel.
Good morning,
Good
Judge
morning.
Whitley, Commissioners. I have today one item to discuss at this time, and it's item F1, approval of Amendment Number 7 and the revised fiscal year 2013 financial plan with the Texas Conference of Urban Counties, CUC, for the Integrated Justice TechShare project. This is our annual support and maintenance for TechShare, as well as support for Odyssey, which is used by probate, civil, and the JPs. TechShare is a program that I fully endorse and am heavily involved in at a number of different levels and across a number of different applications within the portfolio. So I respectfully request your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beecham. Did you have a rough week, huh?
He had a bad deal, didn't he?
Could have been worse. You could have been Auburn.
Good morning. On behalf of purchasing, I'd like to apologize for that display just a moment ago and move on to our agenda. We have 4 items for your consideration this morning. The first item is RFP number 155. This is for the enterprise server lease and hardware maintenance and software for information technology. We're recommending the award to Levi Ray and Shoup, Inc. in the amount of $602,314.68. If approved, we would like to have the contract approval to go along with that as well.
Can you explain to me, is this supposed to be replacing our mainframe?
If I could, Commissioner, I'd like to refer that to Steve Wetzel.
Thank you.
Judge Whitley, Commissioners, in reviewing this whole agenda item, there's several things that stand out. One is that we are downsizing, actually right-sizing the mainframe, reducing our costs. The financial outlay over the next 5 years would be the $602,000. This is still needed to run a number of legacy applications, some lagging applications. Many of those have a roadmap that will currently, that in place currently, that will replace the application. Others will need to have a specific path to move off the mainframe. So we're in a situation where we have both lagging technologies that need to be replaced and a roadmap built for them, and lagging technologies that will need to be moved off under a current roadmap. What I'm also looking at, besides reducing the cost and the overall outlay to support these legacy applications, is the opportunity to repurpose this device in a meaningful and prudent way. I've authorized staff to move forward by adding a low-cost module to this, which will allow partitioning the device and using a different operating system, Linux, which would fit right into our need for additional computing resources for file and print sharing, and support our disaster recovery effort, giving us the ability to offload possibly dozens or even hundreds of servers. Nationwide insurance company did something similar to this, and they were able to replace 600 file and print servers by adding a Linux partition to their system. So not only supporting our existing applications in a downsized or a right-sized level of a platform, but also having the ability to run file and print services and other key technology resources on this and leveraging it because of its high transaction processing capability.
When you are referring to enterprise server, which are you referring to? You're referring to the mainframe, or you're referring to, what are you referring to?
Well, in the context of enterprise services or enterprise servers, file and print servers, when you open a Microsoft Office file, Excel file, Word document, images, things that require any kind of storage for office automation purposes.
So this has nothing to do with the mainframe.
It does. It does. It's leveraging another operating system that can be put on this, so it's not
Which is the Eagle software, right?
Well, it's a Linux software under operating system, which allows us to repurpose this over time and maintain our investment, realize our investment, and get additional value out of the investment. So not only am I talking about using this to maintain our legacy applications and continuing to run those applications to meet the needs of our business units, but also allowing us to have a platform upon which we can add file and print sharing capabilities in the future. So it's not just a transitional technology that will be unnecessary in a few years. It'll be actually a key part of our overall strategy.
Do you see us going away from the mainframe anytime soon?
I see it as a gradual transition. Again, a lot of these applications are in midstream. Work being done by the CUC, the TechShare program, will replace a number of these applications. So there is a roadmap for a number of these. Others, we need to develop a roadmap. So it's a transition, but the key here is rather than just having a $600,000 one-time investment for the next 5 years that will be no longer needed. Once we roll those applications off, we can repurpose part of the mainframe or all of the mainframe to use right within our enterprise environment for file and print services by simply spending another $20,000 or $30,000. So to me, it's low-hanging fruit, and it's consistent with best practices in the IT industry.
It will repurpose the mainframe and give us additional opportunities to achieve return on our investment.
Judge Whitley, Commissioner Brooks, that is exactly the point, yes.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
The second item we have today is in regards to RFQ number 2013-001. This is the Juvenile Forensic Assessment Services RFQ for juvenile services. We're requesting permission to award to the firms and the individuals listed on your court communique, and if approved, we're also asking for contract approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our third item is bid number 2013-003. This is the annual contract for custom file folders for the county clerk's office. We're requesting approval for the award for per unit price for the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed on your court communique.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our final item is bid number 2013-006. This is an annual contract for reinforced concrete pipe, concrete box culverts, and safety end treatments for all precincts. We're requesting that the court approve rejection of the bids and rebid with revised specifications.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did we have a pre-bid conference?
Yes, sir, we did. It was attended by 5 firms, and the 3 that submitted bids were at the pre-bid.
And they still messed it up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But we have spoken to them since then, just to make sure that there's not going to be any confusion the second time around. So we should get a good bid this next time.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
This time, we're going to move back to the Human Resources area. Ms. Glenn?
Thank you, Judge. Our third item, we're asking the court to approve a letter of agreement with Hay Group, Inc. to conduct a benefit analysis. We're estimating the cost not to exceed $30,000. The budget director, if the court approves, will move funds from undesignated funds to cover the cost of this study. As the court may recall, we were here before the court 3 or 4 weeks ago and sought and received the court's approval for our compensation study. So now with this item, if the court approves it today, then we'll actually have our compensation and benefit programs reviewed thoroughly for our upcoming fiscal year. We have asked to be present today, and he is present today, Paul Glogowski, and I believe Mr. Glogowski has with him John Hennessy, both with the Hay Group. And we've asked Mr. Glogowski to come forward and just to talk very briefly about both projects.
Good morning.
Morning, Judge. How are y'all today?
Good.
So I went back and looked, I guess, at the minutes, the live minutes, and noticed that in the previous, when you approved the original project, there were some questions about what our role was going to be in the study. So I know we have some new commissioners that have not gone through this process. So the process is pretty straightforward, a little different this year if you approve the benefits, I guess, additional piece that we've done before. But historically, we've done an annual kind of review of the compensation levels of here at Tarrant County relative to external data, external references of what others pay jobs like your jobs. We typically have approached that study in looking at your employees by category or groups of employees. So we separate out groups like law enforcement, groups like your blue-collar kinds of workers, groups like your administrative staff, and we've typically analyzed pay of those groups here at Tarrant County relative to pay at similar groups of employees in other organizations in the marketplace. Typically, what we do is there are some planning meetings that we meet with Human Resources ahead of time to make sure we understand anything unusual about this particular year's study, anything we might need to focus on in particular, be it compensation, and in this case maybe benefits, if approved. So we do some planning up front. We talk about timelines, projects, those kinds of things. We typically do we have historically done a more localized touch with other cities and counties in the area around your law enforcement. So with some of the databases that we use for your administrative staff, for your professional staff, those are in readily available databases that we have or have easy access to. We do we call it a custom survey. Might sound a little fancy, but we poll them, if you will, through phones and some forms we ask them to fill out on the law enforcement group. We meet with Human Resources typically and get approval of who are those other cities and counties going to be as part of the law enforcement study, and who are we going to survey. So we collect that information. We basically do an overlay of as an example, how are the professional employees at Tarrant County paid relative to the market references. We provide the county a picture of that data, if you will, visually. We also do kind of an aggregate summary of, are you paying at the median of the marketplace? Are you paying above market, below market? And we make recommendations depending on where you reside in that picture versus the market of increasing pay, holding pay, increasing pay more than the market is planning on increasing because you might be behind the market. So we provide that analysis. We bring that analysis to the court we show that analysis to Human Resources before we meet, prepare a report for the commissioners to review, and then I come typically and depends on whether we're doing a benefit piece this year. My esteemed colleague John Hennessy might come and stand in front of you and go over a review of that report for your consideration. In 2008, so I've been working with the court probably since about 1999 or so. We had a period of the last 3 or 4 years where we have not done the study, mostly due to market conditions, mostly due to budgets of your county. Not unusual that other of my clients did the same thing, not doing these kinds of studies. So it's been at least 3 years since we've done the compensation study, and the benefits portion was done last in 2008. So what we have the ability to do in our benefits portion, and if I say anything wrong, Mr. Colleague, come up and jump and get me. We have a capability of, in essence, taking and applying a cash value equivalent to all your benefits. Some of those are relatively straightforward. So if you offer 2 weeks vacation to someone who's making $40,000 a year, we can say, well, the value of that is easily calculated. You have health care plans that have a certain design, certain kind of premiums that you charge, certain kind of deductibles, certain kind of care coverage, certain things you don't cover. We can use that information and we can provide a cash value for that health care plan. That's typically the same for everybody. It's not affected by how much you make necessarily. So it has a consistent value. Some of your other benefits, like vacation, like some of your retirement plans, are affected by what people make. So the value might be different, but we can still put a value on it depending on where you are in your pay. So we can combine those two together, the compensation portion of the study, the benefit valuation portion of the study, and present a picture back to the county about where are we stacking up on what many people refer to on a total, what we refer to on a total remuneration basis. And we bring you a picture, if you will, with backup data. Are you paying totally at market, ahead of the market? And we bring to you detail about what might be causing you to be at, above, below market. It could be your benefit values. It could be your pay values. It could be a combination of both. So we bring that to you and we discuss with you or present to you if you want to change something in that picture you don't like, here's what you might consider changing. Example, if we're positioned above where we'd like to be on total remuneration, Paul, hey group, what do you suggest we do? Well, maybe you hold back base pay. Maybe you reduce some benefit. Or maybe you do a combination of. So the exact opposite. What if we are not positioned as well in the market as we'd like to be as a county? Paul, what do you suggest? Well, you could do several things. You could increase pay. You could hold pay and increase benefits. You could increase pay and hold benefits. Or you could touch certain parts of your benefits. So that's part of what this study is to do. Take another snapshot in time. It's now 2012. This would be done early in 2013, according to what we hear from the Human Resource Group. And you get a snapshot in time. How do our pay and benefits stack up against the marketplace? We do it by employee category. We can put a cash value on your benefits, and therefore everything's converted to a cash discussion. Your total remuneration for someone that, I could pick on Robin, but I won't, at someone at some certain level is $80,000. The market's total remuneration value is $83,000. So therefore, you're slightly ahead of the market. Do you want to do anything about it? That's what we present to the organization. Questions?
If I may. Paul, good
Yes.
morning. In our law enforcement class,
yes,
we've got issues
okay.
that we've been dealing with for a couple of years now, and we need some guidance from an organization like yours and an interpretation of what the market is actually doing. Consequently, we have established a law enforcement compensation committee, which I believe Commissioner Johnson chairs. we would like for you, while you're meeting with HR and planning the scope of this study, to also meet with that committee to get their input on what we might need to be taking into consideration in restructuring the compensation system for law enforcement.
Okay. And I have no problem whatsoever doing that. HR and Human Resources and I, months ago when this first came up in terms of, Paul, we might want to do a study again, and mentioned the fact that there seems to be some concerns in the law enforcement group, and that would we as a firm be willing to meet with this committee? And my response is overwhelmingly yes, sure. We'd be idiots if we didn't, to listen to what those concerns are. My guess today, Commissioner, or estimate, I guess, maybe a better word, is that likely what will be an output of that is some change in maybe the information we collect when we contact the other cities and counties that we have historically contacted, and we make sure we gather the type of information that will at least help us paint a picture of what are others doing versus what is Tarrant County doing. I also would not be surprised that that group of cities/counties that we have historically contacted might change. There might be cities and or counties that are added. There might be cities and or counties that are dropped. But it is part of the normal process that we would typically have with HR about that issue. But certainly I would not be surprised whatsoever that would also be an issue that if it's not brought up by the Law Enforcement Committee, we would bring it up.
My concern is that if there is any part of our compensation system that is broken, it's the law enforcement system. And the question is, well, is it broken? Secondly, if it is broken, do we blow it up and start over?
Okay.
Or are there things that we can tinker with that will fix it?
Yeah.
We need information as a court in order to know what to do about this.
And if we should be providing you that information to help you make an informed decision. That's our goal. We probably will weigh in on, if we were you, and this is the picture we have uncovered, what would we do if we were you as a recommendation.
That's exactly what I'd
so,
like to hear.
It doesn't mean that what I say should go, and that's what our role is to recommend.
Do you include factors such as workplace environment, workplace condition, hazardous duty,
Okay.
productivity into your equation? By that I mean an employee of one company may work 40 hours a week and pay $80,000 a year. An employee in a private industry may get paid $85,000 a year, expected to work 40 hours a week, but in reality, he or she works 80 hours a week. Do you take that into consideration?
Could not take that into consideration. I'd love to. It's number one. It's information that typically is not collected in typical surveys. I will tell you that we hear that from our clients that we work more than everybody else, and are you going to take that into consideration? And I say, well, I'd love to if I could, but I've talked to 100 companies in the last year, and every one of those companies, 100 said they all work more hours than anybody else. So it is it can be a factor that's used just based on experience and information of here's the picture, here's where the data came from, and if someone has the perception that those that participated in the external survey work more hours than us, to me that's a judgment now that has to be made on what if someone believes that to be true, that everybody else works 80 and the employees of Tarrant County only work 40, then somewhere you have the ability to make judgment against that factor.
Well, I can tell you that's not true, because our exempt personnel typically work many more than 40 hours a week. I'm sorry, Joy. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess the question I would ask on that is, do they get paid overtime? And if so, what is their percentage of overtime that you're paying? And that's,
Now that
that's
is
a question that's usually asked.
That's normally asked and normally answered, right? When it comes to a clear question about, is this employee or employee group eligible for overtime in whatever policy you have? If the answer is yes, and what is your policy, if you will, for overtime? Is there certain, there's some of it that's legally required, obviously, but there are some groups that might be right in that gray space, if you will, on overtime eligible.
I think in the sheriff's department, at least, the majority of those folks are paid overtime. And so if you ask that question and then you look at the overtime and then the follow-up question is, tell me what percentage of your salary is overtime.
Yeah, we can do that. There's no problem. So for the specifically for the law enforcement, quote, custom survey that we do, have we historically collected that information? No. Do you want us to collect that information? If the answer is yes, we'll collect that information and analyze it. Because those are, they would have that data.
Certainly on anyone who is what we would consider to be non-exempt and we're paying overtime, I think that's a question that should be asked.
Our experience would tell us that the situation that causes that question to be most at issue is two. One, how much overtime are the people actually working? So can you give us a sense of, so one is, what's your policy? And usually it's a policy driven by what's legally required. And sometimes people do more than that, right? So they have policies that say, well, I'm legally required by government that says we have to pay time and a half any hour over 40 hours worked in a work week. There are some organizations, we should collect this information, that say, and, not legally required necessarily, and if we work X amount of hours a week overtime, at some point in time that it goes from time and a half to something else. So there are, kind of policies that are company by company based that do more and above what's legally required. We'd want to collect that. We'd also want to collect, in this particular case, tell me how much overtime your people are working. So it's one thing to say I have a policy that says if you work 60 hours of overtime in a week, we're going to pay you at some point double time. It's another thing to say, well, how many people are working 60 hours a week overtime? And particularly if that's a concern, not just from the court, but from the law enforcement committee, then we'll craft our survey that we go out and reach out to address those issues.
And you can't do that with exempt employees. You can't measure that.
So your question is...
Here's my concern.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that some of our employees consistently work 45, 50 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Okay? And
so they have a short work week?
But if their annual salary is below par comparing to the private industry, and they're also working longer hours, then to me that justification is important.
Yeah. And for exempt employees, you're not going to get that data.
You're not.
No. You're going to get it anecdotally.
Then why are we paying you for it?
Other questions are...
Because I work a lot of overtime? I don't know.
Any questions? I guess a question, a couple of things. As you're looking at the various departments, when it comes to the sheriff's department, I would like to know specifically what other counties you are comparing to.
Right.
Especially as it centers around our jail employees.
Okay.
As it goes to patrol, then I think city comparisons may be appropriate, but I'm not sure they're appropriate in the jail area. I would also, I guess to some extent, in all of these, I want to know what the high and the low is, because to simply say, we're at the 25 percentile, if we're $1 away from the high, but we're still in the 25 percentile,
okay,
or if we're, just barely above the low, I'm interested in that. So, Sheriff's Department and DA's office, I feel like are something that we should be looking, and maybe you're not doing the DA, I don't know. But I think we should be specifically looking at county comparisons And it needs to be the large urban counties
I mean,
to a great extent.
yeah, it shouldn't be counties that aren't meaningful.
Right. From an administrative standpoint, certainly that includes the private sector. because
Typically,
we
our
are
study does
competing
do
with
that,
them.
yes.
But I'd also like to know there how much of, how we compare with other governmental
Okay.
areas versus
Okay,
the private.
Okay.
And because that's going to be where I know the benefits may help us be somewhat more competitive with the private sector, but I also want to know how we're doing
Okay.
with the government folks.
okay,
In the craft in the garage area, again, that's a competitive with the industry, especially as construction comes back in this area.
yep,
And so that's something that I think is critical for being all, but again, almost a split down, almost a split of, okay, here's where you are in the private comparisons. Here's how you're doing with other counties
okay,
that you're competing with.
okay.
In the benefit areas, you mentioned that you would tell us those benefits where we're rich. I guess I want to know exactly, and I think you're moving to that. Where are we rich, and what makes us rich? And again, going back to, as we're looking at that overall deal, you mentioned that your timing was to do this in early 2013. Mr. Manius has promised us that we're going to have recommendations with regards to our benefits by I'll say the end of March. I think he said the 1st of March. I'm going to give him till April 1st.
I think in our letter of agreement, I
That's what
think
we
we did
talked
have that.
about, that they would meet those timelines.
Yeah.
But because that's got to give our overall benefits committee time to then sit down and come back with.
And so we did talk about that with HR in the process of the proposal and the letters of agreement, that timing is historically different than the previous timings, and we said we're fine with that.
Okay.
We do lead to, I think, we have a payroll run sometime in early January, of which I think there's it's going to be different, right? So we're going to wait for a payroll run to come out.
It's the PFP part.
Right, all that comes out.
So we want the most if we're going to do a snapshot in time, we want the most accurate snapshot in time. So, but we've committed that if they can get us that right after payroll runs, kind of a data dump, if you will, then we can commit to that March time frame. And we'd want to not wait till January to meet, particularly with HR in our typical planning sessions, and then also meet with the law enforcement committee. We're not going to wait till we should not, in my opinion, wait till January to do that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, for those, the earlier the better.
Any other comments or questions?
Is there action to be taken on?
Yes.
Good.
We need approval.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Paul, and your esteemed colleague from HR Benefits. Okay, moving right along. Transportation, Randy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 2 items for your consideration today. Joe Trammell will address the second item in just a moment, but first, we are requesting your approval of an interlocal agreement with the City of North Richland Hills related to improvements to Ruth Snow Drive. This project is included in the 2006 Transportation Bond Program.
Move for approval. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, gentlemen. It's requested today that the Commissioners Court approve an order to vacate, abandon, and close a portion of Fort Worth Crowley Road, County Road 1011, consisting of .503 acres of right-of-way located between Hampton Road and FM 731 in Crowley, Texas, and Precinct 1, which originally had been dedicated to the public for Project Number 11, Fort Worth County Road Number 1011, as described in Road Book Number 2, page 21 of the Commissioners Court Records of Tarrant County, Texas.
So this is an old dedication, and it has in effect been abandoned.
Yes, sir. Since that time, the roadway has been realigned, and it's no longer being used at all. It's just a grassy way, if you will.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Any appointments today? Being none, then we'll move on to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have 4 items that we would like to discuss with the court this morning. The first deals with an item concerning the Sequestration Act of 2012. I'm going to make some general comments, and I'm going to ask Ms. Fillmore to come up and talk a little bit more about this. This is an item that the judge had requested that we put on the agenda because, as you know, there is, at the federal level, that unless some action is taken by Congress, that by January 2nd of 2013, there's going to be a significant, and a significant is probably an insignificant word to talk about this, but an impact on the federal budget and what it's going to cause and how it's going to affect Tarrant County and other counties and local jurisdictions. What we'd like to do today is to have a conversation with you just in generality about what sequestration is and what the details of this particular action is. Also, we have begun to collect some data from our departments to show what kind of impact, potential impact it would have on the county if this were to occur. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Fillmore to come forward and begin that discussion. We have also placed in your folders this morning our first glance at what we believe the impact is going to be during, that is, fiscal year 13 we're looking at. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good morning.
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 As you're all aware, the Budget Control Act could take effect January 2nd if Congress does not amend the current Budget Control Act of 2011. When talking with all of the various departments, everybody has a scattering of information. No one really knows exactly what the impact's going to be. And I think this is true nationally. Because it is such a detailed act, I think I tried to read through it and I got through 294 pages and gave up. It's very detailed from line item to line item about programs. But the bulk of the cuts will come from discretionary programs. Discretionary programs are where many of our things are funded through, especially from the Department of Justice. Fortunately, that's not a huge part of our budget, but looking at the sheet that I believe you have before you, if you'll go down to Juvenile Services, CSCD, all of our alternative court programs. We also have some programs within the DA's office, the Sheriff's office, and the ME's office that also receive funding through these sources. These are most of our alternative court programs, some of our specialized programs that receive funding either straight from the Department of Justice or through the Governor's Criminal Justice Division. Now, the big thing with the Criminal Justice Division, we don't really know how much those cuts will be because some of those are funds that come to the state. The state could choose to keep those funds instead of passing them down through to us. So fortunately, from the overall picture, that's the smaller portion of our money that comes to the county. Now, the biggest cuts, of course, are going to be community development, public health, and housing assistance. Housing assistance, estimates are that up to 200 families could be removed from the program. And as we all know, we have waiting lists now for people to get onto housing assistance. In addition, that would mean a loss of 3 to 4 staff members. Community development, as you can see from these numbers, the bulk of that money is the Continuum of Care program, CDBG funds, home, and the ESG. Now, these dollars, we also get a percentage out of those for administrative costs, so we would lose some positions as well, potentially. Public health, that $1.3 million, that is from about 15 or so different programs, from everything to TB, to HIV, to breast cancer. I mean, it's everything that we receive funding for, just about, to the health department. But I say all of this and go back to say we really don't know at this point. The White House Office of Management and Budget will be the ones that will interpret the act, will come up with the final figures. That could be several months after January before we would know exactly. Most of the cuts are in the realm of 8.2% per program. Things like Medicare, CHIP, food stamps, Pell Grants, transportation programs, those are exempt. So I say all of this, that this is just a guesstimation at this point. The governor's office would say that there would be no cuts in FY13 because they've already received those funds, because those were FY12 federal dollars that came down to the state that were then allocated within FY13. But when you read the act, that's not the way it reads, in my opinion. So this is just to put this out there for us to start thinking about, anticipating, and planning, but I don't know that we can really do a lot of planning at this point.
Well, I appreciate the fact that somebody is looking at this, but it's much too early for us to even be speculating about what may happen. It may be anything from the skies falling to nothing.
I guess the reason that I brought this up is I would like for the departments, or like for, if we're getting money on somewhat, if the money is coming in, I'd like to know whether the money comes to us monthly, quarterly, or annually. If it, based upon that, at what point in time, if it stops coming, what are we going to do?
And a lot of these grant programs, such as CDBG, and that they're reimbursement grants where we actually spend the money and then seek reimbursement for our expenditures.
And so in that scenario, we've got to know something. I think, I guess what I'm just saying is we either need to go up the ladder and say, okay, these are reimbursement grants. At what point in time are you going to tell us that we're no longer reimbursing? I would like for us to have attempted to communicate with somebody, whether it be at the state level or whether it be at the federal level. Because, unless we as a county are willing to step out and say we're going to continue the program, even with the money not coming in from the federal government, then I think we have to be prepared to do something.
Why is the sheriff's office and district attorney's office no responses? They don't get any of these grants?
At the point in time we put this together, we didn't have their responses. We did obtain those late in the day yesterday, and their grants are very, very small amounts. It's $40,000, $50,000, so 8% of that would be very minuscule amounts.
And medical examiner's office have none?
They do, but those are equipment grants, and so they're not impacting programs. And the way we pose the question, what impact would this have upon programs that you operate? And since it's just equipment and it's one-time purchases, they said that really would not have an impact.
Are these annual numbers?
Yes.
So when you say up at the very beginning, 86 million received from federal grant contract funds, total potential impact is the 4.6.
Right.
That's an estimate?
That's an estimate based upon this current year's fiscal year grants and contracts that we've been awarded, and based upon what we actually anticipate receiving, and if those were to be reduced, in the most part, everybody looked at 8.2 to 8.6%, then this would be the impact.
Okay, and so again, I'm going to ask this question just because I'm not sure. It was my understanding that some of those programs might be eliminated entirely because of the exceptions, the things that you mentioned, and that a lot of discretionary monies might be totally eliminated.
Yes.
Not just 8%, but
Right.
totally eliminated.
None of these particular programs could we find any information on that they would be totally eliminated.
Okay. You might check with NACO In fact, I'll forward you a little slide thing that they did talking about some of the programs, just to do the comparison. Again, if that's an annual amount, and if we're looking at that being somewhat divided equally, then, we're talking about maybe $400,000 a month. So that may allow us at least a little flexibility on the deal. What I just don't want to have happen is for us, if they haven't gotten anything accomplished, for us to continue on like everything's going to be okay. Right. And we know that we're going to be coming out of our general reserve, general operating reserve for these dollars.
And Judge, you raise a very good point. And what we're doing, especially in those areas such as CDBG and in the housing area and in public health, we have both state and national organizations that we belong to and direct contacts with the federal government. And we are monitoring this, I would say, if not daily, at least weekly, because we're very sensitive to the same issues that you raised. And so we're not simply sitting back. We've been trying to work on this thing. There's some unknowns, but what we do know is that in the discretionary funds, basically half of it's coming from defense and half of it's coming from non-defense. There are some programs that are not going to be touched. There's some that are going to be touched, and then there's some that actually received a directive where they'll be cut automatically. For example, Medicaid is going to be cut 2%. And you think about the numbers in Medicaid and cutting 2%, that's a substantial amount of money. And so we're tracking all of that, but to make sure that you and the court realize we are in communication with both our state and federal partners on this to make sure that we're aware of any cuts that might be coming down.
I really don't want to be screaming the sky's falling. What I'd also like to be doing is gathering that information and making sure that our legislative delegation understands what the impact is and let them tell us either, yeah, you better be concerned, or no, we think we're going to take care of the issue before we get to the point of having to make a decision, especially as it pertains to staffing, staff levels and things along that type of lines. But equally as important are the as you mentioned, the 200 families that, we might have to say, okay, you're no longer on the program. So what I'm looking for is a when do we need to be prepared to act date, and kind of, if we're willing to continue programs past that date or put additional county dollars into it, then as a court, I hope we can have some discussion about that between now and in January.
January the 1st.
And really, since our last meeting is December the 11th, it's almost going to have to be between now and December the 11th if we're going to do something.
I think the two things I would just leave you with, that as far as, knowing exactly where the cuts are going to be, for this year only, the OMB will be the ones that will interpret and manage where those cuts are according to the Act. Now, starting in FY14, the House Appropriations Committee will have input into that. So we need to be aware of that as well.
Thank you.
Members of the court, we could go to item B. This is a discussion concerning the establishment of the Tarrant County Adult Fatality Review Team. Ms. Hafley is here to address the court at this time.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mary Lee.
So pursuant to the Texas Health and Safety Code, Chapter 672, which you have in front of you, about 7 months ago, a group of both governmental and non-governmental public health private agencies convened to begin discussing the possibility of establishing a adult fatality review team for Tarrant County. Specifically, the statute that allows us to address this talks about in the context of family violence. And so that is our purpose, is to look at this within the context of family violence. The purpose of the review team is not to look into the cause of death, but rather to look at what we could do to prevent those deaths, how our system could be improved to prevent those deaths. So we have about 12 to 15 core members that have been meeting on a regular basis, including public health, law enforcement representatives, the DA's office, private family violence agencies, Safe City Commission. United Way has set in on those conversations as well, to see what we could do about that. So the statute requires that the Commissioners Court authorize the establishment of a domestic violence or adult fatality review team to address intimate partner violence, and so that is the purpose of us bringing this resolution to you. Further in the resolution, Safe Haven of Tarrant County is taking responsibility for convening that. Our intent would be that we would establish policies and procedures. We're looking at some other fatality review teams that have been established both in Harris County, out in El Paso. There's also one in Dallas County as well. Harris County, San Antonio, El Paso, those are kind of the premier ones across the state that we've been looking at. So we need you all to approve the establishment of that so that we can move forward, establish policies and procedures, and then begin to select cases that we might look at so that we can see where our system could be improved, how we could prevent these deaths from occurring. And clearly, all of you know that that has been a serious issue in Tarrant County over the last couple of years. But to the point of Commissioner Wynn's district, for example, the incident that happened at the skating rink, there had been intervention by both private and public organizations in that family's life, and yet we were not able to prevent that death. So that would be a good example of a case that we might look at, bring the partners together that were involved in that case, see what happened, how we might remove gaps in services, remove barriers to services, and create a more seamless system and therefore a coordinated community response to these deaths. So I would entertain questions that you all might have about that.
I'm wondering how you are planning to address these very important issues relating to fatalities due to family violence within the minority communities, and namely those communities who have inherent cultural and language barriers. How are you planning to study and be able to understand that issue within that context?
Thank you for asking. We will have, the teams will be made up of sort of established members or regular members, so, and then you would bring in whoever was involved. But in addition to that, our intent is to have ad hoc members. So if there is a situation such as you described where the culture is significantly important and would bring information to bear on the case as to how we might handle that differently, then we would be asking people with those particular areas of expertise to come sit at the table for those particular cases. So we might ask someone from your office, for example, or ask for your recommendation for someone from that particular community to sit at the table to inform us on the cultural relevance of that.
I would strongly suggest that you pay particular attention to that part of it.
Yes, sir.
Because I know that from the Asian culture, women tend to be protective of their family, and they tend to take assault on themselves just to protect their kids and so forth.
Yes.
And then there's another aspect regarding the Asian American culture is saving face.
Yes.
Okay, one person get hurt, but they don't want to damage the reputation of the larger family.
To not bring shame on the family.
Exactly. So such cultural characteristics are very important in
Absolutely.
prevention.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
You mentioned that the this court has to approve the establishment of the committee.
Correct.
Do we also approve the policies? What is our responsibility past the establishment of that committee?
It is establishing the committee, and then the committee would establish the policies and procedures, but we would bring periodic reports back to Commissioners Court, possibly recommendations as well that might require further action on your part, and the frequency of those reports could be determined by the court.
What authority or what responsibility do we have with regards to the appointment of members of the committee?
You really don't have to have any authority in regards to that. The committee would want to assemble the agencies, and I think you have a list of those that have been supportive and been involved in the phases up until now. So those particular partners would make up the committee.
What if we wanted to add to that or not?
We are open to your suggestions.
Okay. You're open to the suggestion.
Yes.
But again, that's not something we control from that standpoint.
Not really.
Okay. Questions or comments? Do we want to take action today, or we want to put this on a?
There's a resolution that will follow, but we did not anticipate, nor do we want any action today.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. No other questions?
Thank you, Mayor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Lee.
Members of the court, we could go to item C. This is the update on the West Nile virus. Dr. Parker is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As of this morning, we have had 274 cases of West Nile infection reported in Tarrant County, 174 West Nile fever, 100 West Nile neuroinvasive disease. We are continuing to receive sporadic reports of West Nile infection. We have not had a case with a date of illness onset within the past 2 weeks. The recent mosquito pool testing has been negative, and we are continuing to investigate the cases as necessary and are working with partners, both internal and external, on planning for future seasons.
Okay. Any other questions or any questions? Thank you. Now, are we moving this now to a monthly or to some?
Right. This will be the last weekly report, and we will give you basically a written report unless you'd like to have an oral report in court once a month. But with the weather changing, our plans were to no longer have a weekly report to the court.
Weekly, certainly not, and maybe only monthly if we feel like we even need that. I'm not sure.
Okay, great.
As we go out of season.
Your Honor, members of the court, we could go to item D. This concerns the CIP piece of the 2006 bond package. Mr. Phillips is here to address the court.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, David.
I'd like to update the Commissioners Court on the progress of several facilities management construction projects. First, the 1895 Courthouse Site Improvement Project. The electrical vault concrete work will complete this week. Encore Electric Delivery Company will be turning off the power to the courthouse this coming Saturday and the next Saturday after that to do the final hookups for the new feed lines to the building. The bid for the demolition of the old civil courts building will be publicly advertised this coming Friday.
Yes.
Moving on to the Lon Evans Corrections Center. Tarrant County now has its 4th LEED certified building. The new jail building earned a LEED gold level from the U.S. Green Building Council last week.
Excellent.
Thank you. A couple of reasons we earned the LEED gold level is that we were able to recycle approximately 80% of the old Mueller building. And we used 40% of the building materials came within 500 miles of the project site, which earned us a LEED point because of lower transportation impact on the environment. We also, the concrete block, the brick, and the granite came within 500 miles. Moving on to the Correction Center, we will wrap up the replacement of the fire alarm and security system replacement project at the end of the year. Moving on to the Civil Courts Building project, all the underground electrical, plumbing, and subsurface drainage piping will be complete here at the end of this week. The basement floor concrete pours will complete in 2 weeks. The basement perimeter wall concrete pours have started, and they'll complete in December or in early January. Please be advised that we are 19 days behind schedule on this project for 3 reasons. First, we had some adverse weather conditions in September. It rained a couple of days, which is not really the issue. The issue is the mud it left. And it's the hole we've got is 15 foot deep, and it was a mud pit for a few days. Also, we have not overcome the loss of days that we encountered when we found the unmarked electrical lines that serve the traffic signals under the sidewalk on Weatherford Street, and we had to get those relocated so we could dig out for the 20-foot deep electrical vault. Also, the City of Fort Worth did not approve our elevator pit sump drain piping design, and we had to redesign and reinstall it to meet the codes, and that cost us a few days. And then we just now poured the slab for that area yesterday, and it should have been poured a week or so ago. Yates and Van Dyne said it will be difficult for us to catch up on the schedule while they're doing work in the basement because of constriction and trade stacking. They're not going to catch up, and probably until the project goes in the dry, which will be late next year. Regarding HOK Architects on this project, please be advised that I'll be back up here in a couple of weeks to request Commissioners Court approval for additional services to HOK for approximately $130,000 for redesign of the trial courtrooms over the last 12 months, all their effort. I briefed the Commissioners Court back on October 25th of last year on some of the issues we were having regarding the jury box and the litigant area and the bench and all those type of things. They've just finished up the design changes. The mock-up has been finished out at Records Management Center. Judge David Evans is going out there today to hopefully approve the last changes. We're on the bailiff station in the corner. We reconfigured that to improve the sight lines and access for the bailiff. And that's all I have this morning.
Thank you.
Well, on the demolition bids, you said they're going out Friday. When do you expect that building to be down?
How fast are we going to approve the bids?
Quick as he gets them to us, I would suspect.
I would say May or June, time it's down and it's flat and gone, they're gone. And right after that, with the sequence would be, the proper sequence would be, Judge, to go ahead and have our bid let and stage and the contractor stage and mobilize to rebuild the west elevation. That is our goal. We plan to bid the west elevation work probably in March or April. We've already got the granite, so we're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
At this time, we'll recess our open meeting and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. And nobody cares. Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned.
You-